What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of the Amazon original movie, Coming to America. This sequel, of course, is directed by Craig Brewer. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome, hit that like button, as well as commenting below any video to watch, including this one. So can you believe it's been 32 years since the original Coming to America came out? It's pretty crazy to think about because it came out in 1988 and was in the middle of kind of the cultural phenomenon that was Eddie Murphy. You know, he had a Beverly Hills Cop, he had, of course, Trading Places, he had, of course, his specials like Raw and so on and so forth. And so a movie like Coming to America, which was directed by John Landis, was a huge hit, and it's actually become a great comedy classic for what Eddie Murphy and, of course, Arsenio Hall and everybody else in the movie were doing, and especially Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall, who basically wore makeup and did many characters in this movie. And it was a phenomenon. It was a huge movie, and just the amazement of the characters themselves. You know, there were some great characters like the sexual chocolate singer and the Reverend, and, you know, Arsenio Hall dressed up as a woman that hit on both Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. And then, of course, you had the barbershop people, and it was just a movie that was full of great gags, and it had great moments like the Duke brothers, which were connected to the Trading Places movie, which had its own universe now. And it was such a fun, entertaining, not very PC movie, but it had great moments. Even Samuel Jackson was in it and all that good stuff. And so this movie, which takes place 32 years later, now sees Eddie Murphy as a father of 3 daughters. He's still married to Lisa. His father, played by James Earl Jones, who's actually still in the movie, actually is on his deathbed. So he has to find a successor to take over when, you know, Akeem dies. But the problem is he has 3 daughters, and in Zamunda, you can't have that situation because it's a very male-dominated society. So we have a character played by Wesley Snipes who plays General Easy, which is a very funny name. He has an amazing role in this movie. It's really funny how he plays his character, and he basically says, you have to do this, you have to accept my son as the next ruler of Zamunda because you only have daughters. And he finds out through retconning, because this is what these movies have to do 32 years later, through retconning, is he has a son in America. Now, if you remember Coming to America, the original movie, there was no son. He never had sex with anyone. Well, the story is told in flashbacks, and we learn that he actually had a one-night stand with this lady who's played by, of course, by Leslie Jones. And she has a son named Lavelle, who is, of course, of that age. And so what does Akeem do? He's going to America. He's going to get his son. He's going to bring him back. He's going to teach him the proper ruling of how to be a prince, to eventually become a king. And that's pretty much the story. It's about how the connections of the bonds of the father, who didn't know he had a son. There's, you know, many jokes about that situation. You bring in Leslie Jones, you bring in Tracy Morgan, and basically set in Zamunda, you have this crazy story about how Akeem's going to have his successor and so on and so forth. But because this movie is more progressive than the last movie, it's dealing with the daughters in that situation. So to do a sequel to a classic comedy like Coming to America is a very touchy situation, for the simple fact of a movie that has the power that it does, that has the fervor and fan base that it does. When you have a movie like that, or like Anchorman, and you do it 10, 15, 30 years after the fact, a lot of times the humor that you try to instill just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't inject itself very well. So if you look at like Anchorman, the sequel or whatever it was, there was something off and missing about it. They were trying too hard. It was something that was just nothing. It just didn't work. And so going into a movie like this, Coming to America, you set the movie 30 years later, it can become a problem. You know, Eddie Murphy's career was on such a high trajectory that the fact that he didn't do it, you know, 2 years after the fact is, you know, can be an issue. But the one thing that this movie has going for it is you can set this movie 30 years later. You can have a cast that's much older, but you bring back the same cast. You update the humor, you make it more smart, and you give characters a chance to grow past the juvenile natures of what they used to be. So you have Lisa and, you know, Akeem and their scenario with their 3 daughters. You have, you know, Semi doing his thing. You have like, you know, the John Amos character and so on and so forth doing their thing. And then you, of course, you bring Wesley Snipes, and you bring in the, you know, illegitimate son, and you bring in some new blood to kind of reinvigorate this series. And what ends up happening is on top of that, and when you have a director like Craig Brewer, who's actually a very competent director, who's worked with Eddie Murphy before in the Dolomite movie, which was a fantastic movie, as long as you caress the material, you bring it up to a point where everybody's matured enough, and you still add in the humor and the fun of what made Coming to America work, you can have a successful movie, and that's exactly what happens here. So my review of this movie is, this movie does everything well enough to warrant itself to be a competent sequel to the original. It doesn't mean that it's ever going to live up to the original, because the original just had some kind of perfect magic that was just Eddie Murphy at his peak, and Arsenio Hall at his peak, and, you know, Louie Anderson at his peak, and John Amos at his peak, and James Earl Jones at his peak. It was just a different movie with some very, very fun stuff. But I think what this movie does is it makes it a much more mature movie, but adds in the humor that we love and enjoy about Coming to America. There's stuff in here that calls back to the original movie that does it so well that I was actually clapping and laughing my ass off. It was so funny. There's one joke in this movie that I laughed so hard that my roommates were like, what the heck is going on? And it's just a movie that I really feel pays homage to the original movie, but pushes it forward enough that these characters that are introduced in this movie, and these characters that we know and well and love, are put with a lot of respect. So this movie is hilarious. It's a lot of fun. It enjoys what it's doing. And I think having Craig Brewer, who's worked with Eddie Murphy, really helps the movie work, because they add in a lot of contemporary themes and contemporary ideas that a lot of people won't like, because, you know, it's a very progressive movie in that nature. But just watching Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall just come together, doing all the characters that you love, everybody you've seen, you know, in the original movie, or brought back in this at some point or another, and the set in Zamunda just makes the world more 3D and more developed. And I really did enjoy this movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it was exciting. I thought it was funny. I thought it had a lot of heart, and it's a movie that shows Eddie Murphy at a much more mature age, who, unlike, you know, somebody like Adam Sandler, really knows his material and really knows how to work it and caress it and so on and so forth. And on top of that, they brought in the writers to work on the script that were the original writers, so a lot of the material is just, you know, it's there and so on and so forth. And just as fun, just as entertaining, not as great as the original, because the problem I have is some of the material feels a little too in your face, a little too typical of these types of movies, especially with what Eddie Murphy is dealing with his daughters and stuff like that. But it's not enough to make me not want to warrant people not wanting to watch this movie, because if you like the original, I think you'll 100% love this movie, because it feels like a natural extension to the original Coming to America, and feels like something that has a lot of fun, does what it needs to do, and is very entertaining. And you, like I said, you bring in people like Wesley Snipes, who can show off his humor and comedy, and it really works. And there are some characters that, like I said, are brought in that, you know, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe they actually got this person to come back. There's some characters and some other people that are like, oh, they're just throwing that in there to throw it in there because they have a lot bigger budget. But with that said, with this, you know, to end this review, the movie in its nutshell is a great follow-up to Coming to America. I think Craig Brewer and Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall and the cast themselves do a really nice job. I think the new actors that come in, like Tracy Morgan, Leslie Jones, and Jermaine Fowler, do a really nice job to kind of pay respects and to be honorable to the material, while adding their new touch and their new flair. Now, I will say, Leslie Jones and Tracy Morgan, if you don't like their shtick, it can get a little annoying, but it isn't as like over the top and zealous as you're known for them for doing. But it does get there at some points. But if you can't stand them, I apologize. It's just how they are. So, and also one more thing, there is some after credit scenes. There's some like stuff during the credits and then right after the credits and so on and so forth. So stick around for that. But otherwise, thank you, Amazon, for allowing me to watch this movie. Like I said, I could not wait to see this movie, and I was happy after watching it because it felt like a true sequel to a movie that I truly love. So, but with that, that's my take on Coming to America. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below, what's your take on the original movie? Do you love it? Are you looking forward to this movie? If you saw this movie, what do you think of it? What's your favorite character in the movie? I really like the barbershop people. I think they're funny. But otherwise, let me know in the comments. But if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming in next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.